All systems go.
All right, put it in gear.
See how far we get. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Road Noise. I'm sure glad you're hanging out that night here. As we continue to kind of just reflect on the different moments in ministry over the last 50 years of it's been what probably getting 52-ish years or someplace like that now that we're uh, few seasons into this podcast, and I'm I'm just continuing encouraged with your responses back to us and just the encouragement that we hear every once in a while. So thank you for that. And I'm also just encouraged just to continue to reflect back on these stories and hear them sometimes for the first time, and then sometimes hearing them again. It's just an encouragement to me, and just to be. It's also kind of fun to reflect on just the partnership, and it is to just journey with you, Dad, over the last couple of years as we podcast, but also just over a lifetime of sharing a heart for ministry. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where we're going tonight and put a few more miles on this.
Well, just for the record, not that the record means anything, but this coming Sunday, we will officially celebrate 51 years.
All right, 50.
So, yeah, that's coming right up. Like I said, in just a couple of days.
Yeah.
So, 51 years. A lot of things have happened. We put on a lot of miles over those years, and still going. That's kind of amazing and scary to me, but yeah, so there's stories that are constantly developing all the time. But my oh my, last week we talked about cats and pies and so forth. And so this, since we released that last one, I've had people asking, if I know the secret recipe for pie. And the only thing I can tell you is lots of whipped cream.
Yeah,
That's got to be it.
yeah, lots of whipped cream. And if you're just joining us for the first time, or maybe you missed last week's conversation, that's worth looking up, and you'll get a chuckle out of that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, back that up, back the tape up and listen to that one. But anyway, so we had so many fun responses and comments on that one. I thought, hey, this week let's kind of carry that theme on with eating and drinking and things you experience while on the road. So this goes right along with that same idea, but this story takes place many years after the one that we shared last week. At this time, we had John Brock with us, Little John, and John and I worked amazingly together, extremely well, and we had the system down. The two of us could go. Your mom was staying home with you kids, and when John was with us, Kurt and Ken, the twins, had just been born. Just a few months, just a couple of months actually, before John joined us. And so, real soon, John and I started working together and got it to the point where just the two of us could go out and do meetings. And so that was a huge blessing. And John was a hard worker and did an amazing job. We could set the puppet stage up and everything in record time. Both of us knew what had to be done. We both knew, everything and it just worked well. Well, anyway, so John was with us. We were at a church, and over the years, we have been blessed to be able to sample food from some amazing cooks. Because a lot of times, a church, while we would be there doing meetings, would have a potluck dinner. So if we're doing the morning service, there's a potluck dinner afterwards, and so everybody shows up for the morning service because they don't want to miss the food. Or they'll have one, for supper, and everyone comes, and then we'll do an evening program with the puppets or whatever. Well, in this case, we had done the morning service, and they've got the potluck afterwards. Now, I don't really know how these things work. I know that it seems like most of the time everybody just brings whatever it is they want to bring. And that gets the creative juices flowing for a lot of these chefs, some amazing cooks. I mean, they've got their favorite recipe that they have mastered, and so they'll put that together and bring it. And so you get to sample some really good stuff. Other times, I know that the church will kind of have a menu, and they'll have a sign up sheet before, maybe the week or two before, saying, okay, who wants to sign up to bring main dishes? Who wants to sign up to bring a salad? Who wants to sign up to bring the drinks? Who wants to sign up to bring dessert? And so forth. And so there'll be maybe a somewhat of a schedule of a menu that way. Other times, maybe the church will say, hey, we'll provide the main dish. Everybody else just bring in whatever's left, whatever you want. Or the church will say, we'll provide the main dish and all the drinks, and then just bring desserts and something else to pass. Well, anyway, so like I said, I don't know, there's always different ways to do it, but the results are pretty much the same. You're in for an amazing meal. And so here we are. John and I are sitting together at a table. We're in the basement of this church. And they had a separate table that was set up for all the drinks. And that was right straight across from us. There was a couple rows of tables in between, but where John and I were sitting, we were facing that table. Everybody's sitting there eating, drinking, talking, sharing stories, and so forth. Most of the kids were sitting with their parents. The older kids were at a couple of tables by themselves. But there's always those kids. Those kids that, all right, maybe they were the first ones in line. And they are finished with their food. And now they have nothing to do but to run around. Or maybe these kids didn't eat at all. I don't know. But there's always those kids that are just running. And sure enough, there were two boys. I'm guessing probably the one might have been 4 years old, the other one maybe 6 years old. And these two boys are just running back and forth through all the tables and just, back and forth. Talk about energy. And it's like, where do boys come up with that much energy? But they had it. And so as they're running around, they're going back and forth past the table with all the drinks. And I'm sitting there just imagining what's going to happen if they run into that table. The punch bowl is going to get tipped over, or it's going to be a mess. But no one's paying attention to these boys, and they are running. Well, they get to the drink table for the umpteenth time going past it. This time they stopped. And the older of the two boys grabbed a bottle of Coke. Now this was a 2-liter bottle. It was about half empty. And whoever had used it last had left the lid off. And so this, let's call him 6-year-old, picks up that 2-liter bottle and tips it up and takes a big drink out of it. Oh, and then he passes it off to his younger friend, and he tips it up, and he takes a big drink out of it. When he's finished, he passes it back to the older guy, and he puts it back on the table. John and I are sitting there. We witnessed the entire thing. I looked over at John. He looked at me, and I says, John, I don't feel thirsty anymore. And he says, neither do I. And so we sat there. Now, nobody said anything to these kids. I would like to think that if his parents saw these kids, that maybe one of the parents would have said something. Or maybe the parents did see him, but it's no big deal because that's the way we do it at home. I have no idea. But in either case, John and I passed on getting any Coke to drink the rest of that meal. I'm sure there was other thirsty people, and there was probably people that were thirsty and went over and got some more Coke. But that kind of takes us back to what we talked about last week, and about eating what's before us and don't ask any questions. Those potluck things are great, and I love them. But when it comes to personal hygiene things, maybe there's some things that we just are better off not knowing. And that might have been the case this day. But as long as I've lived and as many of potlucks as I've been to, I don't remember ever hearing anybody getting sick or dying from
Right.
eating what's there. Anyway, so that's our story for tonight.
Yeah. 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 I shudder to think about all the things that we've eaten over the years that we didn't know about. But hey, that's the price to play. But also, because you were kind of unpacking that story and talking about the amount of times that you and I and so many others have joined together at a church potluck. It's just a reminder too that that's kind of how the early church in Acts. That's kind of a staple of how they behaved together. They would get together and share a meal in each other's homes and corporately together, and it's a tradition that has kind of centered in community building, church work for a couple thousand years now. So yeah, I'm sure it continues. Although I haven't
You
been to
know,
a church potluck in a long time.
in previous podcasts, I've mentioned a gentleman by the name of Harold Weiss,
Hmm.
and I've got more stories involving Harold, and we could probably share some of those in tonight's podcast because I learned a lot about food from that guy. And one of the things Harold challenged me with shortly after I met him was he said, Sheldon, just sit down and go through your Bible and pay attention as to how many times Jesus broke bread.
Mm.
How many times did he minister to people, shared a meal with them? Because when you sit down with and have a meal with somebody, you're sharing life with them, they're sharing their life with you, and conversations can center around spiritual things, personal things, all kinds of things come about as we break bread together. Well, anyway, so I kind of did that. I took that as a challenge and just kind of as I was reading my Bible, just kind of mentally took notes as to how many times the disciples or other people mentioned in the Bible were breaking bread together. It's an important thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's as you're listening to this and maybe you have had a meal with dad over the last 50 years. Drop a comment and share a memory of time that you guys that you have spent together, either with dad and his ministry over the years, or maybe just a memorable, important meal that you've shared with a loved one. And yeah, we'll see if we can get some dialogue going back and forth.
That
So
sounds like fun.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, hey, let's put it in park here, and we'll pick it up again next week.